And just before beginning today, I would like to start our meeting by honoring the land that we are on, which has been the site of human activity since time immemorial. It is the traditional territories of the Huron-Wendat, Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Ontario is covered by 46 treaties and other agreements and is home to many Indigenous nations from across Turtle Island, including the Inuit and Métis. These treaties and other agreements, including the One Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, are agreements to peacefully share and care for the land and its resources. Other Indigenous nations, Europeans, and newcomers were invited into this covenant in the spirit of respect, peace, and friendship. We are all treaty people. Many of us have come here as settlers, immigrants, newcomers in this generation or generations past. We are mindful of broken covenants and we strive to make this right with the land and with each other. I would also like to acknowledge those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. And so I honor and pay tribute to the ancestors of African origin and descent. So welcome again, everybody. My name is Jesse Renata. I'm a community coordinator with the Toronto South Local Immigration Partnership, where I lead our Newcomer Services Collaboration Working Group. It's a dedicated strategy group of individuals representing some of our partners, and they helped put together today's webinar. And as many of you and many of us know by now, newcomer serving sector funders have signaled that remote or hybrid service delivery, which had emerged as a necessary response to the COVID-19 pandemic, will remain a part of the sector going forward. And I'm sure we've all come to know over these past few years that hybrid service delivery has and will continue to come with increased challenges for service provision, but also new opportunities for the sector. Based on the input that we've received from our partners through a needs assessment that was done earlier this year, TSLIP's Newcomer Services Collaboration Working Group is hosting today's webinar that's geared towards newcomer serving sector staff to learn about programs that have shifted to hybrid delivery, promising practices, and new and specialized functions on virtual platforms such as Zoom, Discord, and WhatsApp. We have some fantastic guests here to show us what they've been doing and what specific things we can do to make our programming more effective using familiar and possibly some new tools as well. We'll start with a presentation by the youth programming team from West Neighbourhood House on the Discord app, followed by our guests from Together Project to speak about transitioning to remote volunteer support for refugees using WhatsApp. And then finally, the ACCESS Employment Online Services team will take us through using new and specialized functions in Zoom, which is a very, very familiar kind of platform for many of us, I think. And after each of these three presentations, we'll have about 15 minutes for Q&A. Please use the raise hand function, which can be found under the reactions tab, which is just along the bottom of the Zoom window. It should be a smiley face with a plus sign next to it. If you don't see it and you might see some like 3 dots, you can click that and it'll show you some more menu options, and it might be under there as well. You can also use the chat box to type in your questions to the presenters during the Q&A period as well. So with that, I'll hand it over to the West Neighbourhood team to introduce themselves and take us through their presentation.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. As mentioned, we are from the Newcomer Youth Program at West Neighbourhood House. My name is Jorge. I'm one of the Newcomer Youth Program workers, and I'm accompanied by John. John?
Hi, everyone. My name is John. I'm also one of the Newcomer Youth Settlement workers at West Neighbourhood House.
So today we're going to be giving you a brief overview to tell you about Discord and how we're using it and some of the features. And I'll just also show you some examples, some use cases that may be useful for you and take consideration for future uses. Next slide, please. So this is our agenda for this presentation specifically. We're going to be introducing you to Discord. I'm going to introduce you to the functions as well, give you a little bit more detail about that, and then go into use cases, show you some examples, some screenshots of examples. And lastly, we're going to go to some conclusions. Give you a brief summary that you can then take to consider for future use. At the end of the presentation, we are hoping also to share with you all a document that's more detailed about how Discord specifically works. And I'm hoping that can also help you in your planning. So right now, John is going to be putting a Mentimeter link in the chat, and we're hoping that you all can access that. And we're going to be asking you to name what messaging apps you use in your daily life, for work, how you go about your day, when you volunteer, when you're in the community, whatever you use to communicate. Just feel free to put it in there. You can access the Mentimeter now. I'll give you a few minutes for this.
So you can use your phones to go to www.menti.com, and then you can enter in the code shown here on the screen, or you can just use your phone to scan the QR code and it should bring you over to the screen. And this is also another platform that you guys can use in your programs to get like anonymous to ask questions and get anonymous responses. This is something that we typically use with our youth a lot of the times. I think most people should be logged in by now. I'll put up the question that Jorge asked. So, what are some of the messaging platforms that you guys use? You guys can type it in on your phones right now and it should pop up here on the screen. We've got WhatsApp, Slack, Signal. I've never heard of Signal before, actually, so that's interesting. Telegram, yeah. LinkedIn. IG. Does anyone use Teams to communicate with other members of their organization? Yeah, Teams is up there. WhatsApp is a big one. Most people are using WhatsApp. Facebook Messenger. Just give a couple more seconds. Yeah, looks like WhatsApp and Telegram are leading the way. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. I'm gonna go back to the screen.
So yeah, thank you. That's very insightful. I'm surprised that Telegram is very popular. But yeah, so as you know, thinking about what we just shared in the Mentimeter, as you can see, some of the main functions of the common apps that have been shared is group messaging, individual messaging, and voice and video calls. So that's usually what most of this are usually used for, is direct, instant communication that is reliable by internet or by phone service. I'm surprised nobody mentioned text messages. I guess nobody texts anymore, but that's still a reliable method of communication. Next slide, please. And so Discord can really manage all of that. But again, I wouldn't say that it's tailored for individual one-on-one communication. That's why most of these messaging apps are more popular. But it is capable of doing all of the functions. Additionally, let me go to the next slide. Some of the additional features include like screen sharing, You can add custom emojis, like you can upload your own emojis to Discord, and you can use those emojis to react and share. And also servers. I think servers are the bread and butter of Discord. That's where you can that's when you can see Discord really shine, because Discord is really meant for larger groups, more collaborative spaces. And also Discord also allows you to access a feature called roles, which is essentially giving people a specific tags, if you would call it that. So you can mention a specific tags, such as @everyone, that would notify everyone that there's a new message. But if you don't want to notify everyone, if you only want to notify specific people, you can give people a specific tag, such as @volunteers, and you can only notify people who have the volunteer role. And that will make sure that the correct people get the correct message and they're able to see it, because that will notify them that no, there's a new message. Usually the default settings for Discord are that you will only get notified when there's a mention. So when somebody specifically adds your name or your own tag. So that's why just making use of this feature is very important. I think that's, it really helps to ensure that there's a communication channel open. Yeah, and that makes sure that people are actually seeing the message that you want to see. Next slide, please. So a little bit of history about Discord. As you can see here, Discord started back in 2015-ish. And it started off as just a small platform that was meant for instant communication by voice and by text for gamers. So when you were playing a video game, you would just log into Discord and you would be able to communicate with your teammates, very efficiently. But over the years, it has really like exploded in popularity and functions. So now Discord has become more of a place where you can create online communities. So starting off, it's really like changing from the Skype type platform that we used to know to something that where you can have online communities centered around a specific theme or specific topic. For example, you can have a Discord server that is, for example, for our use cases, is centered around the Newcomer Youth Program. You can have something else, some other servers that are centered around an idol, an artist, a specific theme, some advocacy groups, stuff like that. And really, that's where Discord has really put most of its efforts in, is making those servers the easiest form for large groups to interact with each other, really communicate and engage. And I think over the years, from my own experience, I've seen Discord being used for not just for like my friends. We have a small Discord server. It's really not much big of a deal. It's just a text channel and a voice channel for us to talk in. But if you when in university, there's also some specific cases where people are using that for planning events or hosting events during the pandemic, and also goes into the Discord pillars that are listed here. So you can see, I don't know if you can see it there. It has the Discord pillars are really for reliable and fast communication, having few restriction on the use cases, so you can really make it very customizable. And you can integrate bots. So bots are like automated programs that Discord allows for people to really like automate some functions, or give some more functionality to the server. For example, if you wanted to listen to music together in a channel, you can all hop into one voice channel and have the bot play music, and it's just it's really convenient. You can, as I said, it's not just tailored for one-on-one communication, it's tailored for large groups and communities. You can make communities online, which is really the bread and butter for Discord. And file sharing, which, compared to, I would say, Teams has a really effective file sharing system. But Discord just allows you to keep things without a limit on size most of the time. As long as you have links to it, Discord will allow you to share the link. You can just keep it there for records and for easier access. Next slide, please. Okay, so now I talked about a little bit of I got ahead of myself a little bit about talking about how I've seen it used on my own experiences with school and with my own personal life. So now we're going to show you some other examples of what a Discord server really looks like. So it's a screenshot from the University of Toronto Vietnamese Student Association and their Discord server. So this is what their Discord server looks like. This is just their welcome screen back in 2020. So as you can see on the right is the list of channels and categories that are, they all have a name, they all have a purpose. So you can keep a conversation going and around a specific theme in that specific channel. That prevents clutter, makes things more tailored, I would say. So specifically here in the text channels here have the number sign. So you have that sign. That's how you know that it's a text only channel. So you can share images, you can type, but you can't voice chat. If you want to voice chat, there's, as you can see below there's voice channels that have a little speaker icon. And that's where you can join in, have your microphone on, and start talking. You can also do screen sharing in specifically voice channels as well. The right channel, as you can see there, it's specific for seeing how many people are are online at the moment and how many people are are in the server in total. You can also see above there's the inbox icon and the help icon and the search bar. This is very important for you to know. So you can search for literally anything in the server, specifically in the search bar. You can search for specific things like that were mentioned in a specific channel, or that somebody mentioned, a specific user mentioned, or that mentions a specific code word. You can search for that, and the inbox that's right beside it will give you access to any notifications that you may have. So if anybody mentioned you in a channel and you're wondering where is that notification, you can go to the inbox there and access it right away. Go to the next screen. So this is a screenshot from one of their events from the University of Toronto Vietnamese Student Association. And you can see here, so this specific screenshot captures the screen share function there with the text channel. So you can pop out the screen share or whatever stream you're watching from the voice channel, and you can have it floating as you're going about your text channel usage. So in this particular example, participants are sending an emoji to reply to a question that is being presented on the screen. And if I remember correctly, this event was something like Family Feud. So people were trying to press the button, and in this case, it would be to send an emoji to press the button. And yeah, it was a very popular event. That was from back when the pandemic was just starting. As you can see there, the text channel has 25 participants, but this event specifically had maybe 4 or 5 voice channels that all have different events going on at the same time. Let's go to the next one. So yeah, so this is our server. This is the Newcomer Youth Program server. So our welcome screen has been automated by a bot. As you can see here, Dino helps us to refer everybody to the rules so they can read over the rules and our guidelines. And then they will be able to access the server by just reacting to the white check mark there and getting a role a member role that will give them access to the rest of the channels in the server. For the next slide. For example, if somebody new is joining, this on the left side is what they'll see as soon as they're joining. So they're going to see the welcome screen telling them to go check out the rules. They go check out the rules, they come back to the welcome channel, and then they check the mark. And then they can access the server and see all of the other channels that we have open. And as you can see there, each channel has a specific name and a specific purpose, so that people know if they have a question specifically to, let's say, employment, they would go to job hunting, and then they would be able to find out, send a message there, and we'll be able to reply to all the queries there. And next slide. Yeah, so in our server, we regularly share resources and updates such as volunteer opportunities, job postings, and trainings. So having dedicated channels that are specific to each category really helps out to keep everything organized. I'm going to pass it over to John so he can talk a little bit about our programs that we've done in Discord.
Thanks, Jorge. So I'm going to be talking about how we've used Discord in the Newcomer Youth Program specifically. And so in our regular programming, we often use the voice and video call function. And so we especially use this for our homework help program, which initially started off in person. We used to do this in partnership with a local Toronto library. And because of the pandemic, we shifted it online to Zoom. But because of difficulties with accessibility, the youth would always have to message us to set up an appointment to coordinate with us and a tutor, a volunteer tutor who we would work with. We eventually shifted over to Discord, where we had something like a drop-in session. So we would have a specific time. So for us, it was Thursdays between 4 to 5. That's when there would be a staff member and a volunteer tutor who would be online on the voice channel, like between those times. And the youth could drop in any time between 4 and 5 to ask for help with their homework. And this made it super accessible. And individuals were also, as Jorge mentioned before, were able to share their screens so they could look at each other's homework and work on it together in real time. And from what I know, other organizations and programs have also used Discord, where they would have like a virtual study space where they could like play music, share music on Discord while silently working with their friends and with other members of the Discord community, where they could like keep each other accountable. So it's just like studying with your friends at the library, but virtually. And we, like Jorge mentioned, we also use Discord as a means of sharing resources. Like here you can see the specific channels that we have, like job postings, interviews, resumes, job applications, where we can share resources pertaining to that topic. So for example, if we had like a job posting we came across, we'd post it here on job postings. Or if you have any resume tips, resume best practices, you can post it here on the resume channel. Or if they wanted you to review the resume, they could post it there, and then a staff or the volunteer could also look and review the resumes. And so that made it really accessible and organized. And also we've used Discord recreationally for our recreational programming. So there is a popular game among Filipino youth specifically called Mobile Legends. And so we decided to create a little tournament for these youth. And so we use Discord as a platform for to meet with the youth and to get them to talk to each other and meet each other. Because the gaming platform itself doesn't allow for verbal communication between people. And so Discord was a way to facilitate this. And so we would have them come in, to Discord login and like meet each other, do a little quick Q&A, any questions about the tournament and stuff like that. For each round, we'd have them come in, and then eventually we'd stream and broadcast the game live on our Facebook page. So it was a Facebook Live for other youth who aren't part of the Discord channel to watch the game and the tournament live, and they could like comment and cheer for their favorite teams or for their peers. And that was a great way to use Discord in our for our recreational programming.
Thank you, Jan. Yeah, so we're going to be coming into the closing portion. So, you know, as we come to close this presentation, I'd like to direct your attention to this graph specifically. So you can see here, there's a comparison between, you know, the most popular platforms that we discussed, that we kind of shared in the Mentimeter as well. So you see WhatsApp, Messenger have really large user spaces, as was evident in the Mentimeter. And, you know, and Teams, Discord, and Slack, you know, they're more you know, less, I would say that they have less user spaces because they're more tailored to specific purposes. So Teams, you know, as we all know, is mostly for, you know, business, really formal engagement, you know, meetings, stuff like that. So, you know, it's not really like everybody can use Teams. It's not really like that. Sometimes you would need an office subscription, so it's not accessible. Slack is also, I would say, a light version of Microsoft Teams. So it's a mix between Teams and Discord. So it's still very, you know, accessible, you know, user-friendly, and really productive. But it's mostly used for startups and, you know, marketing, you know, stuff like that. So, you know, it's still kind of like business tailored, but it's not really as popular. Then you have Discord, which is really kind of the opposite. It's not meant for business. It's not meant for really professional communication. It's more meant for community and communal online community on Discord. So, you know, you can see how there's some parallels between how they are all used. But then again, for specific purposes and for Discord, for youth work specifically, I think Discord has much more capabilities and potential compared to WhatsApp and Messenger. Messenger and WhatsApp are not as easily manageable for larger groups. You know, you can only have one group chat, and all of you can have multiple group chats, but they're all combined into your own group chats. So it's a little bit messy. Discord, you can have multiple channels that are all organized specific to each you know, themes we explained today. You can mention specific people and specific roles that you want messages to reach, and it's easy to set up. You can just have a Discord server that is completely free. You won't reach any roadblocks until really like maybe when you have like 300, 400 users, right? So there's like very high limit for you to encounter any roadblocks in your Discord usage. So it's free, it's accessible, and I think it's you know, you can really customize it to your specific uses. So yeah, that is all for our presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Jorge. Definitely a lot of interesting functions on that. Thank you so much for a thorough presentation. We have about 10 minutes for questions. I'm sure folks have questions around Discord, so we can open it up to Q&A. Again, just you can use the raise hand function. You can find that in the reactions tab at the bottom of your Zoom window. If you raise your hand, and we can invite you to unmute yourself and and ask your questions, as well as using the chat function in the chat box. Yeah, Rahel, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. That was a great presentation. I never heard of Discord before, so it was really good to to learn about this app. And my question is this is it possible to download this app or use all the features on a laptop or desktop? Because not all staff have access to cell phone, like a work cell phone. So I was wondering if it's possible to use these features on a laptop or desktop.
Yeah. So Discord is very flexible. I think you can access it on iPhone, iPad, Android. You can access it on you can download the desktop app, so you can download it on Windows, Mac, and you can also use it on the web browser. So it's really flexible how you can use it, how you can access it. I know I think the only places where you can't download Discord would be, like, for example, things that have a locked system, for example, like a TV box, a gaming console, stuff like that. That's not really meant for Discord, but you can download it on any other personal device.
Thank you.
Anna, go ahead.
Hi, so both John and Jorge, thanks so much for that presentation. Just quickly, you mentioned at the end that there's no cost per user for Discord, that it's free. So I'm wondering if you can, just verify that. And then also, I'm wondering if you have only used it with youth groups, or have you thought at all about using it with like a larger client base, all ages? And what kinds of challenges have you run into when trying to expand the platform to a user base beyond youth groups?
Right. So specifically for cost, so Discord is a free to start model, right? So you can start your Discord server for free. Pretty much no restrictions on most things, really. I think you will have a restriction on, for example, if you're screen sharing, you have a restriction to quality of the video. So it won't be like high definition 1080p. It might just be 480p or 720p, which is still, pretty good quality. And I think the only things that you may want to consider if your server tends to grow a lot, it would be server boosting, which is that's where the paid model comes in for Discord, which allows you to really expand the way you use Discord. You can have on a higher limit for custom emojis, higher video quality, but that's just like little nice to haves. They're not like must haves unless you're really like making your community really, really large. It's just nice to haves, but it is really free to start, really accessible to start.
And in terms of expanding it beyond the youth program, we as a team, we are the Newcomer Youth Program, so we don't really work with those who aren't between the ages of 13 to 24. So we haven't had the chance to experiment and like use it beyond our client base. Yeah.
Thank you.
I also had a question kind of based on that. So if folks did want to kind of use this with other age groups and kind of try to implement the programming, it sounds like if folks are not familiar with this type of like server or platform in the past, that there would be like kind of a large kind of like, or a steep learning curve. Are there resources that you've kind of come across like online? Does Discord have it like videos or tutorials that folks could use to kind of get used to and familiar with the platform that you've seen?
Yeah, so I think their Discord Q&As, FAQs on the website have really useful information on how to use Discord, for really brand new users. And when you're starting your first server, I think you won't be necessarily going all in like our server is already. Our server is very well developed. It's like really far. Everything is really organized, has categories, has different navigation. Um, but I think Discord is a little bit. It may have a little bit of a learning curve, but if you think about it like Teams, all your channels, all your text is on the left side, right? So you can find everything you need on the left side, and the main screen, the middle, will always be where you're going to be looking mostly to see if you're in the right place. So, and I think you will need to, if you're going to use Discord, you will need to make sure that your account has two-factor authentication, which we all have become kind of familiar with over the past 2 years, just for security. But aside from those things, so two-factor authentication would be recommended for everybody. And if you think about it, like Teams, your text channels, your navigation will always be on the left. You will always see where you're going, where you're going to be. On the left side, you can always scroll up and down, and on the main screen, you will always find like the content.
Great, thank you. And there is a question in the chat. Would your team be open to having a meeting with my organization to possibly help provide more information and advice on Discord? So I'm not sure if that's within your capacity or if you have the time to be able to kind of share some insights and answer further questions and possibly provide some guidance, but there is a request in the chat for that.
That sounds interesting. I think if you get in touch with us, just send us an email. I think we will be able to discuss further like how specifically we can support you.
Great, thank you, Jorge. If you could, you or your team could share your email if you're okay with having folks reach out to you. If you could just share that in the chat, and then we can invite folks to reach out to you directly. A couple more minutes if there's any other questions for the West Neighborhood House Youth Team. Jenny, yep.
Just a quick question around privacy issues, and that's something that obviously when we're working with participants and clients, we want to be sure that we're creating a safe space and it's a private space. So how do you find Discord in terms of maintaining, the privacy of the users?
Yeah, so I think Discord really does a good job at making sure that you are in control of how safe you want your Discord server to be. So when you're making your server, they'll ask you about how strongly do you want the privacy and the moderation to be. Do you want to be extra safe, completely like not allow anybody that doesn't have a verified Discord account to join the server, right? And that helps to reduce the potential for anybody or any how do you call it, like disruptions from external sources. You can also make sure that the content that is shared is appropriate. So for our service specifically, we have the strictest level of image and link scanning. So any links and any images that are shared are all scanned for potentially harmful content, potentially malicious links. So we're making sure that we have the highest level of security in that sense. And in general, Discord really keeps most of the text channels encrypted, and there is end-to-end encryption for voice channels as well.
Okay, and Catherine?
Hi there. Oh wait, I guess I should put my video on. Thank you very much, Jorge and John. That was fantastic. I maybe missed it, but did you say this is a free platform?
100% free. Well, to start. then as I mentioned, if your Discord server really tends to grow and you want to do more with the server, then you can look into boosting the server, which is when you can access more premium features such as additional emojis or higher quality video.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking of those gamers who have thousands of followers. So eventually,
right,
Discord would approach them and charge them. Okay, so but free for basic users. And the other question I was going to ask about security, which Jenny already asked, if we were going to use it as an organization, of course, we'd have to know that it was fairly safe and secure. So then the last question I was going to ask was, a lot of these social platforms start with youth, but then they grow from there. Do you think that Discord, it seems fantastic and it does so much, and because it keeps the conversations, I guess, organized, just like Teams does, do you see it having this future scope as becoming more widely used? Because then it would be great to start using it for all of our groups, not just youth, like we're thinking of it for youth, but maybe it would be beneficial for all our client groups.
Right. I think I'm thinking of some examples for use cases that I've seen from my own experience. So, for example, let's say there's an entertainment company, right? And they want to have a specific server for everybody that is involved in the project. So they will make one server for everybody to be in, right? And then they will have that one central server. But then from that, they can make a different server that's more specific for a specific purpose, right? Say they want to make a specific server for, let's say, promotions, right? They can make a server that is specific for that. So so I'm trying to make a parallel between, you can have a server that is for the whole organization, for the whole program, right? And then you can have a specific server that is for a specific program, right? Centralized. And each server will allow you to add a subscription. So you can add a subscription to your own server. So let's say you want the organization server and then an announcements channel, right? You have an announcements channel. So you want the announcements channel to be showing up in the server that is specific for, let's say, youth programming, right? So you can add the subscription to the youth programming server, and people will be able to see the news from the other server in your own server.
Yeah, amazing. It seems sort of like a one-stop shop, that for an organization, it could be like having their Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, all on one site. It's really great. Thank you so much for presenting.
Okay, and I think we have time for one last question. Rahel?
Hi, thank you. My question is related to accessibility. Now we're facing so much issue for use to access services. Would this, be another barrier for use to access this, services, or to be connected with information and resources? And how could we overcome that?
I'm wondering if you mean by accessibility as in like ease of use?
Yeah, ease of use.
Ease of use, right. So Discord does have the basic ease of use tools that most other platforms have, such as contrast text, narration, and larger text. So you can really go into the appearance settings for Discord, and then you can like change how big you want the font to be. Do you want contrasting colors? Is it for colorblind mode, stuff like that? And I think the accessibility really comes down to the user. So how the user wants to tailor the experience. You can also tailor it for your own server if you want to enable some accessibility measures, but the user really is in control of how they want to tailor their own experience for Discord. It will translate between whatever server they go into.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, great. Thank you so much. Thank you both very much for the presentation. A great, super informative presentation. You may have become the unofficial ambassadors for this platform for our sector, I think. So it sounds like it could be super effective for a lot of the programming that takes place. So thank you. And so next, I wanted to pass it over to Together Project, to Anna and Andrew.
Thank you, Jesse. I'm just going to try to share my screen here so everyone can tell me if they see our presentation come up. Can everyone see that?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay.
Yep.
Fantastic. Great. And I'll turn it over to you to do the introduction.
Okay, great. So hi, everyone. My name is Anna Hill, and I'm a co-director at Together Project. Andrew, do you want to say hi as well?
Sure. I'm Andrew Lushtik. I'm the other co-director at Together Project. I lead our programs.
Yeah, and so I just, again, really want to thank John and Jassy for that fantastic presentation on Discord. So today, what we're going to talk about is how we use WhatsApp to help build social connections between refugee newcomers and volunteers who are part of our Welcome Group program. So we'll begin by just giving you a really brief introduction to our Welcome Group program. Then we'll take you through specifically how we use WhatsApp to support that program delivery. And then we'll kind of end with how we're thinking about transitioning to more of a hybrid service delivery model that hopefully incorporates the best of kind of our remote social support, pandemic response, but transitions back to some in-person interaction between volunteers and newcomers. So just briefly, Together Project is a charitable initiative of Make Way, and we're trying to make change in 3 specific ways. We're trying to build newcomer social connections. We want to support newcomer integration priorities, and we're trying to amplify community involvement in newcomer integration. And to kind of explain how we do this through our Welcome Group program, I'll just turn it over to Andrew to just explain a little bit about the program.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're going to have less of we're going to have less focus on explaining what WhatsApp is, because I think John and Jorge did a fantastic job explaining to Discord. I think everyone's already familiar a little bit with WhatsApp, so we're going to kind of contextualize it in our program. So what our program does essentially is form social connections. So we connect refugee and refugee claimant newcomers with what we call a welcome group of typically 4 or more volunteers. And over the course of 6 months, those volunteers provide social support that's tailored to every household's specific integration priorities that they identify themselves. I'll give examples of what that looks like in a moment. And in terms of kind of speaking about the features of the program, I'm putting them here in the context of the remote model of our program. So what we've been basically doing over the last 2 years, because that's really kind of heightened the use of WhatsApp and other communication tools over the course of the pandemic, as we shifted from an in-person model, which is how the program started, to a fully remote model, as many of you probably did as well with your programs. So in terms of key features, we do online volunteer vetting, training and support and recruitment. We do group matching. So as I mentioned, we actually connect volunteers with each other and then connect those volunteers with newcomers based on volunteer experience, interests, and skill sets, and how they correlate to newcomer priorities and preferences and locations. We also provide translation support. So every volunteer, every welcome group will have the support of a volunteer either embedded in that group or supporting that match with a household who can help with translation. And Anna will talk a little bit about how that works in the context of WhatsApp. We include evaluation and iterative learning. So this is obviously very important as we're using these different communication tools, including WhatsApp. to learn about what works, what doesn't work, kind of how to encourage the next match to be better informed by those preceding it. And we also use preference matching, as I mentioned earlier, to really kind of dive in deeper to figure out what the right criteria are for what kind of a household. And this also changed over the course of the pandemic, as we realized that the criteria for fully remote social support could look very different to that used for in-person support. And also working together with the settlement sector. So kind of identifying that criteria with the support of our partners to kind of understand, who's best suited for the program in the context of digital social support. And we had a bit of a head start in terms of how we transitioned to the remote. We've always been using WhatsApp since the foundation of the program in 2016. We thought we were very clever. We basically used it as an opportunity to connect volunteers with newcomers remotely, so they didn't have to use any kind of a physical space to meet or to coordinate their support. So we started out as a very small team with no physical infrastructure, so we couldn't kind of invite people to meet in our lobby or something like that. We really had to lean on the internet and digital tools to provide that kind of meeting space. And really, WhatsApp was our foundational one. And as Anna will explain further, really it was because of the existing popularity within the newcomer community. In fact, in many of our earlier matches, newcomers were far more fluent in using WhatsApp than our volunteers were, and they actually helped them kind of teach them how to use it. So what does all of this actually look like in terms of our program delivery? So over the course of the pandemic, obviously a lot of LINK classes and ESL classes were shut down, but even when they were active, we encouraged our volunteers to do regular online English language practice sessions to build on what newcomers were learning elsewhere, or in the absence of those courses when they were shut down for in-person lessons, to help them practice kind of at their own speed. We take a learner-centric model to kind of try to adapt newcomer learning or rather tailor the learning to every newcomer in the family. That includes WhatsApp in terms of just using it as an opportunity to practice their English, but also using WhatsApp to coordinate sessions, so kind of coordinating schedules, etc. We also, volunteers could also help young adults build their resumes, find job opportunities online and apply to them, prepare for interviews. Again, WhatsApp and other tools were very handy for this in terms of just kind of dropping a link, and setting up a time to kind of talk about these things in more depth. Finding recreational or online activities for children, helping them with their homework, navigating healthcare challenges, for example, accessing vaccinations, and mitigating social isolation through regular check-ins via WhatsApp. And this is kind of using WhatsApp in the traditional sense. Volunteers, could very easily throughout the course of their day or the course of their week, check in with the family that they're matched with just to see how things are going, if there's any challenges that have come up. So it's not, their interaction isn't relegated to specific times, but really it's ongoing throughout the course of their 6-month match. So I'll stop talking and I'll let Anna explain a little bit more around how we used WhatsApp specifically. So I'll turn it back over to you, Anna.
Okay, so I think I just want to begin by reiterating what Andrew said, which is that really our choice of WhatsApp had to do with the fact that all the newcomers in our program, they all have a phone, and almost all of them were already WhatsApp users when they signed up to participate or were referred by our agency partners to participate in the program. So in terms of practically speaking, for those of you who have volunteer programs, the way that we use the platform is we set up a WhatsApp chat that has all the volunteers and the newcomer household and a Together Project staff person in one chat. And then typically we'll have a separate chat, which just has a Together Project staff person and the volunteers in it. And this allows us to kind of use the volunteer chat to kind of brainstorm, supervise volunteers, share specific resources, whereas the chat that has the newcomers, volunteers, and us in it, that's really where the volunteer and newcomer interaction is taking place online. We found over the course of the pandemic that it can be quite helpful in our matches to at least begin with like a specific meeting time that happens every week over the 6-month match duration. And so what that means is that, as staff people, we'll be able to see in the chat between the volunteers and newcomers kind of how the match is progressing each week. There will either be text messages happening in the chat. Sometimes there's voice memos. It just really depends on how the newcomers and volunteers want to communicate. But it's just this kind of amazing way for us to really keep track of how the match is evolving, because we're able to see all of this communication that is occurring. Another really wonderful function of WhatsApp is that it's fairly easy to assign an interpreter to one of the chats, so that we're working with a lot of government assisted refugees as well as refugee claimants, and the government assisted refugees in particular often have fairly low language levels. And so the interpreter is able to in real time provide interpretation in the chat for the volunteers in the match who may not be literate in the family's language of origin. In terms of how the chat is used by the newcomers, in addition to just making plans for a specific time to meet up, or using it to call or set up a video chat, newcomers often will share specific documents that they might not understand, and they're asking for interpretation support. Also, it's, our program delivery is really through our volunteers. So it's really nice for us to be able to share resources in the volunteer staff chat, and then the volunteers can then share those resources with the newcomers once they kind of have dug into them a little deeper and understand them a little bit more. I think just one other thing to say is that sometimes at the start of the program, there can be varying levels among the newcomers in terms of, comfort or sense of trust with the volunteers. So often what will happen is newcomers may want to start out just engaging with the volunteers over the text function only. And then as a comfort level develops, they may opt to use the phone function where everyone can be on a group call, or a video function. And I think one thing that is kind of interesting over the sort of 2 years of the pandemic, when we started out, we were primarily making our match introductions over text. People were just introducing themselves through text chats. But what we've seen over the last 2 years is that as this kind of comfort level with videos, video chats increases, we now make almost all of our matches either over WhatsApp video or Zoom. And there just seems to be this kind of growing comfort, I guess, among newcomers with, engaging with volunteers on video right from the start of the match. But for those who may feel less comfortable with that, there's always this kind of path of slowly just engaging by text and then moving to video as they feel comfortable. Next. So I think, in terms of who the WhatsApp platform has been most successful for, I mean, definitely I would say for single youth, single mothers, single parents, remote social support, and the use of WhatsApp to connect with volunteers has been a real lifeline during the pandemic. Many refugee claimants in particular have fairly high levels of digital literacy, and they're able, as Andrew said, to use these platforms, WhatsApp and other platforms, even more successfully than our volunteers. I think in some cases, especially for some of the families that have very low language levels, what we found is that communicating through text with interpretation can be a little bit cumbersome. And so what we've ended up doing is, if there is a low language level a newcomer household in our program, or even a newcomer household that may not be literate. What we end up doing is recruiting specifically for volunteers who speak the family's language of origin. And that really allows the use of the WhatsApp platform and the remote social support model to primarily be occurring in the family's language of origin. And that was really a learning for us during the pandemic, that we just have to actively recruit. For some newcomer households, we have to recruit volunteers who really are quite fluent in their language of origin. Next. So in terms of the strengths of WhatsApp, we've already mentioned it's very popular among newcomer participants. I would also add that, like Discord, it's also free. There's no limit to the number of users. You're not paying a per user fee for the platform, which you are with like Slack, for example. The supervision that is possible because there's a record of all of this interaction is just fantastic. All of our Together Project staff team, we're all supervising matches. Most of us will start our day by just kind of scanning the chats. And if an issue has come up where it's clear that there needs to be some staff support, we can just jump in and provide that support. Another thing that's really interesting is that, you know, these chats can extend beyond the 6-month duration of our welcome group program intervention. So when volunteers sign up, they're signing up to support a family specifically for 6 months, and staff are supervising those WhatsApp chats for that 6-month period. But we have many volunteers and newcomers who stay connected, you know, for years beyond this introduction that's happening through the welcome group program. And these chats are a way for newcomers and volunteers to kind of maintain that social connection even after, you know, we've administered the exit survey and the match has quote unquote ended, which really means that our formal staff support comes to an end, but it doesn't mean that the connection between the newcomers and volunteers has to end. I've talked a little bit about interpretation. And again, I just want to say that this voice memo feature it's super convenient, both for newcomers and volunteers who may not have the time or feel comfortable with the texting function, but they can just send me a voice memo, send the volunteers a voice memo, and the volunteers can do the same. So it's a great way, like for me as a staff person, to do a quick check-in with what we call the welcome group lead, find out how things are going. It takes me 5 minutes. I send a voice memo and I get a voice memo back from the volunteer lead. Next. So in terms of WhatsApp weaknesses, I think some volunteers are kind of aware of some of the Facebook controversy, and there's a reluctance among some volunteers to use WhatsApp. When that has been the case, what we've done as an alternative is we'll just set up a plain old text chat. We don't see this often, but you know, we're certainly aware of some of the Facebook controversies. Another limitation is that sometimes we will have a lot of family members who want to be on a video chat, as well as 5, 6 volunteers, as well as a staff member. Our WhatsApp introductions can even at times include one of our settlement agency partner staff who's referred the family to the program. And there really is a limit of 8 people on WhatsApp video chat. So in cases where we need a larger group, we'll just move to Zoom. Another thing that we've come up against is there can be real cultural differences between how people communicate over WhatsApp from different cultures. So what I mean by that is, you know, many Canadian volunteers will use a lot of exclamation points. They'll use lots of emojis. They might send very long texts. Whereas, you know, newcomers who are just learning the language, they can send, you know, very short, yes, no, I'm okay kind of responses, and volunteers have to kind of realize that, you know, it's not that they're not engaged, it's that they're communicating differently because of a language barrier, or they may just use emojis differently, or they may not use exclamations at all. So that kind of conveying of emotion, we see differences. And then kind of a final thing, I mentioned the positive of the fact that these WhatsApp chats can extend beyond the 6-month match duration. But from a kind of staff perspective, there's sort of this awkward decision that we have to make sometimes of when to archive a chat and when to kind of keep it open indefinitely, so that that sort of end of the WhatsApp chat is always, yeah, it's a little bit of a tricky decision for us. So maybe I'll just pass it over to Andrew to talk a little bit more about some of the successes and challenges that we anticipate as we move into this hybrid social support model.
Thank you, Anna. So I'm just conscious of time, so I'll try to keep this fairly short, but so now we're in the process of transitioning to a hybrid model. So we started out as in person, we shifted into remote, and now what we're realizing is there's actually a lot of benefits to some of the kind of tools and possibilities provided through these different communications tools that we really leaned on during the pandemic. And we want to kind of figure out what is the best balance of those tools versus in-person support, for, you know, which works best for which kind of newcomer household, for what kind of group of volunteers, in which geography that we work in. And so we've really been trying to kind of figure out what the perfect kind of combination is, to not use a kind of a one-size-fits-all model, because we have noticed that a lot of newcomers are very keen to return to kind of in-person support, and certainly some families are really better suited for predominantly in-person support, whereas others are fully comfortable with kind of staying remote. So we're trying to kind of figure out where exactly in the middle we want to land. And so I kind of want to, you know, maybe take a more macro perspective out of necessarily specifically WhatsApp, but also just in the context of this webinar, kind of how remote social support has helped with our program delivery and how it's potentially hindered or limited. You know, one of the wonderful things about remote social support is the flexibility it provides in terms of scheduling and availability versus in-person interaction. As I mentioned earlier, you can, you know, the door is always open. You're providing social support on a rolling basis, as opposed to, you know, thinking around transit schedules or kind of getting out to a suburb, things like that. It certainly streamlined our onboarding and training. So again, the challenges of getting people in a room all at the same time. You know, now we can train people remotely, do webinars like these, etc. Using these different online tools has also encouraged us or rather helped us encourage some of our welcome groups to stay better organized. So, you know, sharing their calendars, keeping track of each other's activities within the group. We've also transitioned to kind of a new digital platform to manage all of our volunteers as well. So this has kind of really helped us grow as a program. As Anna mentioned, there's also a lot of newcomers who actually prefer that kind of remote social support, certainly from an initial point of view, as opposed to perhaps the awkwardness or discomfort of being put in a room physically with strangers who are going to be supporting their household. This allows a bit of a, you know, more gradual transition, which is easier for some families. And, you know, one of the biggest challenges before the pandemic was the proximity. So as you can imagine, a lot of our volunteers in a place like Toronto, for example, are downtown. A lot of newcomers are in the suburbs. And so, you know, if we're relying on in-person interaction, that can be a big challenge if you're asking a volunteer to go, you know, 2 hours one way on the TTC to visit the family. All of a sudden that's squashed, and it's flat. There's no barriers. Newcomers and volunteers can interact, you know, instantaneously from anywhere they are. We have some matches where volunteers are outside of the country and they're still interacting. So that's been a fantastic asset for us over the course of using remote social support. In terms of limitations, you know, I'm sure many of you are going to be familiar with some of these, especially in the context of newcomers, but obviously digital access, digital literacy, you know, level of comfort using technology. And I mentioned over the course of the last 2 years, we've certainly seen how that's been ameliorated for a lot of families, greater levels of comfort, et cetera, but it certainly still is a challenge, especially if there's one digital device for a large family, for example, and that's really the bottleneck through which the family is able to interact with the volunteers. A bit of a softer one, and this is certainly one that we see even between volunteers in a welcome group, but also between the volunteers and the newcomers, is the difficulty in feeling connected or unified, or that sense of camaraderie without face-to-face interaction. I'm sure we're all familiar and we're all probably tired of talking about how online meetings are not the same thing as face-to-face meetings, and that's certainly the case when you're trying to build these long-term durable social connections. For some people who are very familiar with and comfortable with using messaging apps, that comes a lot more naturally. But for a lot of other people, it's really hard to kind of take that leap to another level of social connection without being able to interact in person. So that kind of extends to the next point as well, of the challenge of building that connection between the volunteers and the newcomers. There's a more limited range of support activities as well. So we've realized over the course of using remote social support that there's certain challenges that are actually quite hard to kind of accomplish fully remotely. Social interaction obviously being one of them, but even things like helping with service navigation, helping with digital literacy. How do you help someone use a laptop if you can't sit next to them and kind of show them how to use it? So there's certain limitations to that, where we've noticed that volunteers have a greater challenge than they would if they're interacting in person. And the language barrier is heightened. So obviously, as Anna had touched on, literacy challenges is obviously one, but just in general, without the ability to sit, and use body language and use, other activities to kind of foster understanding, the language barrier really becomes heightened. So we've really had to lean into finding volunteers who have those language skills necessary to make a match work. So all of this is really kind of pointing us to where we think hybrid support can be most effective. As I mentioned, virtually all of the newcomers who register for the Welcome Group program indicated that they do prefer some form of in-person interaction, maybe not all of the time, but certainly some of the time. And we are conscious of that. In terms of matches where we see predominantly remote or entirely remote interaction really working best is, I've touched on this a little bit already, but high digital literacy, comfort with messaging apps, so that, it's more normal for them to, for example, get to know somebody or engage in social interaction over a video call or over text. Also, newcomers who have very clear priorities. So when there's less ambiguity in terms of what the relationship is about, i.e., I'm sending you something, you're helping me understand what it is, or I need help to, accomplish X task. That's a lot more straightforward. If you don't have to necessarily be in the same room as somebody to understand how that works. Whereas for in-person support or predominantly hybrid support, it's more suited to newcomers who have a lower digital literacy, higher language barriers, and those who really want to focus on a social connection. So if their main focus of the match is around getting to know, to build their social connections, build their social networks, that really comes with an interest in in-person support and a higher success when in-person support is provided. And I'll just wrap up with one last slide. And that's just to say that we're actually taking a very serious look at this, specifically this question. So with the support of IRCC's Service Delivery Improvement funding stream, we actually have a new project that's taking place over the next 2 years involving Western University, TD Bank, Diversity, COSTI, and CCI to learn specifically about this, who responds best to remote versus hybrid social support, and what insights that we might glean from that might mean for broader settlement service delivery. So we're doing an evaluation through Western University of before and after the intervention of the Welcome Group program to see what really works and for whom. And some of our settlement sector partners are working with us to refer their clients for that study. So come back to us in 2 years and we'll hopefully have a lot more information that'll be useful to all of you. So thank you very much for your time. I'm sorry we went a little bit over there, Jassy, but.
Oh, that's great. That was a really, really great presentation. Thank you so much. I think you highlighted a lot of the different challenges and concerns that are also, come with the shift to hybrid and remote service delivery. I just wanted to quickly point out that we were scheduled to take a quick 5-minute break, but I think what we'll do is, because the next presentation will be starting at 11:25, if you need to take a quick bio break, please do so kind of at your own discretion, but we do have time for some questions and a Q&A. So we will open that up to all of you. Again, please use the raise hand function if you have a question, or you can also type your question in the chat as well.
So I'm just looking in the chat here and scanning for raised hands. If I miss you, please feel free to just unmute yourself and jump in. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, Janie.
Yes, it's Janny.
Okay.
Just a quick question. I know you mentioned a little bit about this in your presentation, but did you find that you actually grew your client base because you used these platforms? And anyway, just wondering what your experience was.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's a really interesting question. I think from certainly from a volunteer perspective, I guess one way I'd put it is that we were able to have more volunteers participate, largely, especially initially, because of what I mentioned about the geographic proximity. Previously, if you're a volunteer who's just can't commute or isn't available for in-person support, then it might take a really long time for you to be involved. All of a sudden, the floodgates are open, and we can now involve you if you're in Barrie and you want to volunteer with a family that's in Toronto. So really quickly, we certainly had an uptick in volunteers who could participate. With newcomers specifically, I would say that actually, especially when we've kind of first made the shift, it wasn't necessarily as easy because there's a lot of, again, the tech challenges kind of prevented a lot of families from meaningfully being able to participate. As Anna said, you really now need to have a phone and be able to use WhatsApp and feel comfortable on a weekly basis hopping on a video call. And a lot of families just weren't. And previously that wasn't so much of an issue because we really used WhatsApp just to coordinate meetings, etc. And all the action, so to speak, took place in person. But I think, as Anna said, that's really shifted over the last 2 years, and I think everybody now is at least more comfortable. So we've been able to kind of expand to a larger group of newcomers as well. Sorry, Anna, you wanted to mention something as well.
Oh no, I would just have said the same thing. I mean, to give you a sense of like how much our volunteer engagement increased, I would say it actually about doubled. So, the year before the pandemic as compared to the year after the pandemic, we were working with 200 plus volunteers the year before the pandemic, and then after it was close to 500. So it was like a huge change. And so I think some of that just had to do with the fact that people were at home, they weren't working, they wanted to do something, and supporting, newcomers, I think, was a way to try to help make a difference with the social isolation that we were all experiencing, but, gear that focus on social isolation to some of the communities who were hardest hit. But I do think, as Andrew said, the other thing is just that it's just much more accessible for volunteers to do this kind of work if they don't have to spend a lot of time, traveling across Toronto. I'm just scanning for any other questions. Maybe we all need a washroom break. Anybody else? Okay, Jassy, shall we maybe pause?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you so much to Andrew and Anna. We can take, I think, a 2-minute break. So it's 11:23. Let's come back at 11:25. The presentation will start promptly. I know there's a lot that they have to cover, and you won't want to miss it because there is a lot of great resources and information in that presentation as well. So quick 2-minute break.
Thanks.
Okay, so we're at 11:25 and it was a quick break. But at this point, if our presenters are back, I see Keisha. If Catherine is back, we can get started.
Thanks, Jesse. Let's see. Catherine, are you here?
Apparently I was more than 2 minutes. Sorry. Are we on?
We are
yeah.
on.
I'll pass
We
it
are
over to you.
on. Great. Okay. Thank you so much, first of all, to Jesse for the opportunity to present, and to our other presenters, Jorge and John and Andrew, Anna and Andrew. And I have to say, those platforms, those were so innovative, so cool. It really opens up your mind as to the possibilities for better engaging with our client groups. And having said that, well, we're talking about Zoom, which maybe now doesn't seem like as advanced and innovative as it did sound 2 years ago. But what we're hoping to do is to assume that everyone knows some of the basics as participants. We've all been participants, but to get a little bit of a behind the screen. So my name is Catherine Wilding. I am the manager of entrepreneurship at ACCESS, and my colleague, Keisha Ramnery. You want to say hi?
Yes, thanks, Catherine. So my name is Keisha. I am the coordinator for online services here at ACCESS.
Great, and thanks, Keisha. And Keisha already said hello. And Keisha, as coordinator of online services, she leads a lot more Zoom presentations than I do. So she is really going to take the lead in the presentation. But we're both saying a little bit. And as I said, the intention is to do a little bit of a behind the scenes of what some of the maybe stumbling blocks when you're presenting or hosting or creating events for the first time. And having said that, because we are in Jesse's Zoom, it's a little hard for Keisha to then go to another Zoom to present, but we're going to do our best to show you that. And a lot of the things we're showing you, basically the first time, if you're hosting for the first time, our advice is to set up a little test pilot session among your own team and to try it out so that you've had a little bit of practice before you're ever doing it for the first time. So with that said, I think I will share the screen and we will get started. Over to you, Keisha.
Thank you, Catherine.
Oh, there we go.
Perfect. All right, so thank you everybody for attending today. So we're really excited to be giving you this information. So pretty much what we're going to talk about mainly in depth is Zoom, but towards the end we will talk quickly about some overviews of our other platforms that ACCESS is currently using so far. So of course with Zoom, we know that, in terms of what it offers, you can connect with your clients or team members one-on-one or in large groups. You can do this through meetings, or you can even run webinars. Zoom also offers personal meetings, which I'm sure a lot of you have experience with. Now, the benefits of using Zoom, of course, is because it's a great platform for any events or trainings or even basic meetings that you may be holding within your team or organization. Basic accounts are free, but of course do have some limitations, which would be different than, the licensed accounts where you have more attendees than you would with a basic account. Oh, sorry,
it's free.
In terms of the numbers that you might have for those presentations. So of course, Zoom is able to support large audiences with different features such as the breakout rooms, polling, screen sharing, and of course whiteboards. And we'll get into those a little bit during the presentation. And then of course, you can record and share your recordings or post even to YouTube from those recordings. So you can switch the slide. Thank you. So this is what's on the agenda for today. We're going to go through it as quickly as we can just to stay within our time limits. But these are the things that we're going to go through. So meetings versus webinars, how to create them, the settings, waiting room, polling, screen sharing, breakout rooms, whiteboard, recording and where to find your recordings, reports, and Zoom integration. You can switch the slide. Thank you. So Zoom meetings versus webinars. So of course, everyone knows that there are two different types of events that you can hold within Zoom, one being meetings and one being webinars. So the meetings are designed to be more of a collaborative event, such as this one. So as you can see, a lot of us can share our screen. We have access to, opening our video and our audio and seeing who else is in attendance under the participants page. Now, as I was saying, participants they have most of the same permissions as the host, except for being able to create breakout rooms and doing the polling. So with meetings, there aren't any email reminders that automatically go out. There are waiting rooms. So I'm sure most of you had to wait for the host to let you into this meeting in order to attend. And then there is polling that you can do from a meeting, but you can't set it up as an attendee. Now, webinars is a little bit more complicated in terms of what you can and can't do. So webinars are designed so that the host or any designated panelist can share their video, audio, and screen. So a panelist would be somebody that maybe is collaborating with you on the webinar that you are hosting. Maybe you have a guest speaker that's going to be coming in, and that person is going to be sharing their screen and needs the same permissions as you do as the host. Attendees can interact via the Q&A box, chat, and answering poll questions. However, they are in listen-only mode. So what that means is they can't actually speak freely as we do within a meeting. However, as a host or a panelist, you can unmute an attendee that's in the webinar. However, for most people that are coming in, it's just a listen-only event. Now, webinar attendees aren't able to rename themselves. So if they're logging in as, under somebody else's account, it's going to stay as that name. Whereas, in meeting, you can rename yourself to adjust depending on the account that you're using. The host and panelists are the only ones that can share their video and audio. And with webinars, there is the option to send email reminders automatically from the Zoom account to the registrants that have taken the time to register for the event. The difference with a webinar and a meeting is that you can actually run a practice session in a webinar, which you don't have the capability of doing with a meeting. So instead of a waiting room, really, we can run a practice session where it will only be, the panelist and myself, and we can, test out our equipment, make sure everything is working. And then once everything is good to go, we know that we are ready to start the webinar and to start having people enter into the webinar itself. Then we can close off the practice session and start the actual webinar. So kind of similar to a waiting room where you have control over the individuals that are going to be attending. However, you don't have to physically admit each person or a bulk of them. All of the individuals that have registered will automatically be put into the webinar once you close off that practice session. So with webinars, there aren't any breakout rooms, and only the host can see who is in attendance. But of course, you can change that to reflect, the participants to see each other. But most of the time, due to privacy, with a webinar, we usually just keep it as the host. And surveys can actually be added for feedback after a webinar. So that's one of the great things that we'll show you quickly as well. So you can switch the slide, and I think I'm going to share my screen now.
Okay,
so
I will stop.
No problem. Okay, so we talked about, what a meeting is versus what a webinar is. So to give you an idea of creating a webinar and a meeting. So of course, everybody should have familiarity with, once you log in, this is the page that you're going to see. As you can see on the left side here, you have your meetings and your webinars. So if you go to meetings, you have the option to schedule your meeting. And based on this, of course, you're going to put in, the title of your meeting, when that meeting will be happening, how long you want that meeting to run for, and of course, the time zone. Now, with creating your meeting settings, you can choose, like, let's just say, for example, you're going to be running maybe a recurring training that's going to happen every Friday for the next 4 weeks. You can hit recurring meeting and, have it recur on a weekly basis every Friday, and have it end by a certain day. So you can actually tailor how you want your recurring meetings to display, so that you don't have to keep adding new meetings. So this will just add it automatically under all of the meetings in your block. Now, in terms of security, so you have the option to put a passcode in. So if you have maybe a group of clients that maybe have paid for a session, so for example, with our bridging programs at ACCESS, we actually always put a passcode in for the most part when we have attendees that have been registered into our program, so that, the link isn't shared amongst, other individuals, allowing them to get into the meeting. So usually we have a passcode that, the individual will have to put in order to join the meeting. And then you have the option to enable the waiting room. So making sure that you as the host can admit individuals that are waiting to get into the meeting with you. Now, in terms of video, you have host and participant. Now, most of the times we leave this off only because at the end of the day, once the meeting starts, you have the option, as well as the participant, to turn off or on your camera, as well as the audio. So for audio, you always want to choose both, just in case somebody is logging in from a telephone or computer. Some people do have to, use their camera, but dial in, and it's always good to have both enabled to allow them to do so. Then, of course, you have your options. So as a host, I'm going to allow my participants to join anytime. You have the option to mute your participants upon entry. So if you wanted to, have anybody that's coming in mute automatically, you can do so. You have the option to create a breakout room that is pre-assigned. However, I always recommend not clicking this and waiting until you're in the actual meeting, only because, you never can anticipate how many people are attending that meeting, if it's, a staff meeting or it's open to the public. So it's always good to do it in the actual meeting when you can see physically how many people are in your meeting, and we'll get into the breakout room as well. You have the option to automatically record your meeting, which is always, great, so that you don't have to remember when the meeting starts to click that button, because sometimes you do forget if you are overwhelmed with, what's going on in the meeting. It's always nice that once the meeting starts, it can automatically record. And then, of course, you can put in your alternate hosts, but they have to be under your account. So I can't put in a host that is from another company or organization. It would have to be a host that is under ACCESS Employment, because we are using an ACCESS account. And then interpretation. So you do have the option to select interpretation languages if you are going to, for example, ACCESS has a French financial services connections program. So for example, maybe we might need an interpreter, as well as, most of the clients may be coming in are French, but some might need, interpretation for English. Then this would be an option for you. You would have to have 2 mediators in this situation, because you will have one person speaking one language while the other is speaking a separate language. So it will automatically mute out, Catherine, correct me if I'm wrong, the person that's speaking, and will automatically interpret to the language that you needed interpreted to. So essentially,
I have, sorry, Keisha, I'll just jump in. I've seen it used once before in a national setting, and it was really amazing. It was great. It's not automatic. It's not like Google Translate that it does it for you automatically. You have to assign someone to do that translation. and then that would basically be their sole function in the event. They couldn't actually participate in the event because they're busy. And then, yes, if I join and I'm English speaking and Keisha is French speaking, I choose that I want it in English. And then when Keisha speaks, her audio will be muted and I will be hearing the translator. I hope that makes sense. Again, if it was something you were ever going to use, you'd want to try it out among your own team first, but it is a pretty cool option.
Thank you. So yeah, once you save your meeting, then of course you'll see all of the details in which you've chosen. You'll see that Zoom generates a meeting ID that you can send to clients as well as the invitation link. So let's just say for some reason the link isn't working for somebody, you can give them the meeting ID number and they can put that number into Zoom as well and get into the meeting just like you would if you were using the link. And then as you can see here, the only other option for a meeting is polls, and we will talk about that quickly as well. Now, let's just say, for example, you've created this meeting and realized, oh, this actually needs to be a webinar. You have the option of doing that here. So want a webinar instead of a meeting, it can actually be converted just by clicking this button, which is really cool. So that's about meetings. And I'm gonna go into webinars. So we do have a webinar that's running right now. But essentially with the webinar, you would put, again, your topic, the description. So maybe, you know, if you're having a guest speaker and you've created a flyer, you want to put that information on there for anybody that's registering for the event. And then just similarly with a meeting, you're going to put in, you know, the date, the time, what time zone, and the duration of that webinar. You have the option of, again, making it a recurring webinar. And if you want to enable registration. Now for authentication, you can choose if you want to require panelists that you've invited to the meeting to authenticate to join, which if you're inviting, you know, anybody that is a panelist, you wouldn't really need to do this because of course you've invited them, you know that they are supposed to be attending the webinar. And similarly for attendees, it's the same thing. Most of the time you don't want any of the attendees to have to, you know, register or put additional information after already registering once. So it's always better to leave both of these unchecked. But of course, depending on your situation and the type of event that you're running, you may need to have further authentication for that. And then similarly to a meeting, you have the option of creating a passcode for any attendees that are going to be hopping into the event. And then just as we said, for video and audio, it would be essentially the same. Now for webinar options, you have the option to enable your Q&A, which is always really important, especially because it is a webinar. So remember that these clients that are coming in, attendees that are, you know, in your meeting are actually not able to talk. So for them to communicate, it would either be through the chat function or the Q&A box. But of course, you want to save your Q&A for the actual questions that you would want to keep organized, whereas chat, they can make comments and interact that way. Now here you can see that you have the option to enable a practice session. So this is just kind of like a waiting room, as I was saying, for a meeting, but for a webinar. So what this pretty much means is once you save this webinar, sorry, you have the option to open the webinar before it's even available for attendees to get in. And that way you can, you know, make sure that everything is working, your slides are good to go, and all of that good stuff. And then of course, automatically record webinar, and then you have your option for alternative hosts and interpretation again. So I'm just going to change the time so I can save this. So as you can see here, once I've saved this, because I've enabled the practice session, the button is right here. And when you click on that, it will open a typical Zoom page. The only difference is it'll say at the top, this is a practice session. Do you want to start a webinar? So once you click that button and you're ready to have your attendees come into the webinar, you would hit that button and everybody else would be able to join and the practice session would be over. So as you can see here, these are the settings that we have. And then similarly, if you want to convert this webinar to a meeting, you can do so. Now, just quickly, because I know we are running out of time, if you are inviting panelists to your event, this would be where you would put it under invitations. Now, when you're doing this, it's very important to make sure that in your email settings, that the invitation email to panelists is set to on. So make sure that that's always checked off, because if you are inviting a panelist, what's going to happen if that's not checked is once you put them in, they're not going to get the email. So it's always good to make sure and double check that that information is in there so that when you are inviting them, they are receiving that email. And then of course, with your email settings, you have the option to, send a preview email to yourself if you want to see what it looks like that's coming from ACCESS, or you can edit it. So if there's some, extra body that you want to put into the meeting, maybe you have a SurveyMonkey link that you want to put in, you can do that by editing any of the following email settings. Then of course, branding, if you are, as you can see, ACCESS has their own branding for their emails that come out with Zoom, but depending on your organization, you would change that. And then you have the options for polls, surveys, Q&A, and more. But before we get into that, we're going to get into the waiting room. So Catherine, if you want, I'm just going to stop sharing here. And then if you want to pull up the presentation just with the pictures of the waiting room. There, perfect. So essentially, these are just some screen grabs because we weren't able to, from Jesse's meeting, I wasn't able to create a separate meeting and have you guys see what I'm doing. So this way we just kind of grabbed some screenshots, but essentially when you do enable a waiting room, what's going to happen, as you can see here for security, it shows you, what we just talked about under the settings when you were creating your meeting. You would hit the check box there. And then once you're in your actual meeting, like we are right now, as you guys can see, we can see here on our meeting with Jassy, participants, there are 23. Now, as people come in to the meeting, you're gonna see that, this person is waiting and you have the option to admit them. If there's multiple people that are waiting in the waiting room, then what's going to happen is you're going to see a button that says admit all. And by doing that, you're able to actually let them into the meeting. So these are just some examples of what you would see and where you would look in order to find where those individuals are waiting in the waiting room. So you can switch the slide. So before we get into breakout rooms, I'm actually going to go into polling. So I'm going to share my screen one more time. Sorry, guys, we're going back and forth. So when you're creating a poll, the best way to do this is, obviously, if you want to be organized, doing it beforehand. So as you can see here, both the meetings and the webinars has the option for polls at the bottom of the settings page, okay? So if you go to polls, you can actually create one. And what will happen is once you create this poll, it will be able to show up in either, whether it's the meeting you created it in or the webinar. And, for example, I can, maybe we're doing an icebreaker. We're putting in, what is your favorite sport? And then you have the option of what kind of answer you want to give. So they have a single choice or they have multiple choice. And what you would do is you would just remove what is there and, basketball. And then same thing, you can say soccer. And just hit add question, and you can add as many questions to your polls as you would like, and then you would just hit save. Now this poll is ready to go. So from the end of when you're in the actual meeting, Jassy, I think you created the polls for us, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I did.
So as you guys can see, like even just being in this meeting, that at the bottom toolbar, there is the section that says polls. And pretty much Jassy can launch the poll himself. I believe you can do that from your end, right, Jassy?
Yeah, I can do that now as the host, but participants likely may not see polls, I'm not sure, but and co-hosts are not able to, but I can start that now if you like.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay, and there's 2 questions in this poll.
So these would be, for example, the questions that, we made previous to when the meeting started. So essentially now, if we want to be especially interactive, maybe in a webinar where the individuals can't speak freely, this would be a really interactive way to get, communicating and, keeping them interested. So as you guys can see, as people answer, you have the option of choosing whatever answer that you want. And, as all of us are in this meeting together, we can kind of see what the answers are looking like. So it's a really just cool way to get an idea of how polling works and how interactive it can be depending on the meeting that you're holding or the webinar. And it's cool because, you can see here, hybrid service delivery, 2 questions, 9 out of 16 people have participated in the poll so far. So you can kind of keep track depending on if you're expecting 100% participation and so on and so forth. So thank you, Jassy, for that. And then you can just hit end poll. And then as you can see, there's the button here that says share results, but all of you can see clearly what the results were of the 2 polls that we just did. All right, so that's just a little bit about polling. Of course, it is pretty self-explanatory, but if you ever do have questions, you can reach out to us. I'm going to talk about share screening now. So this is pretty self-explanatory. If you are in a meeting, because if you are a host, sorry, we're not looking at this from the participant view. But if you are the one that is going to be sharing your screen as a host, what you would do, and I'm sure all of you can see this from your view, is again, the bottom toolbar has that nice big green button that says share screen. And by clicking that, you have the option to pull any of the pages and websites that you have or presentations that you have. All of them will come up that are currently open on your computer, and you would just, choose whichever one. And by choosing it, you have now been able to share your screen. So it's very, simple. With meetings, anybody can share their screen. So as you can see, I just shared mine while talking to you over Catherine. But in a webinar, the only people that will be able to share their screen are the panelist and the host. So this one's pretty self-explanatory when it comes to sharing your screen with anybody that's attending the meeting. So, since I'm here, I might as well just scroll on through, through the breakout rooms.
Continue.
So what we're going to do is we're just going to talk about breakout rooms quickly. So a breakout room is pretty much the opportunity for you to, and this is only done in a meeting, you aren't able to use this function in a webinar. It's an opportunity, maybe if you want your clients to interact with each other, your attendees, you want them to be able to speak with one another, or maybe you're running maybe a mentoring event or maybe mock interviews. That's what we would typically use breakout rooms for with ACCESS. So essentially, the only people that have access to creating a breakout room is the host and co-host, or I believe, yeah, host and co-host are the 2 that can create a breakout room. Now, how it works is essentially, again, at the bottom bar of the Zoom page, you have the option to create a breakout room. And when you click that, on the left, as you can see here, it says create breakout rooms, and it gives you the option to choose how many. So you can, have the participants choose the room, you can assign manually, or you can assign automatically. Usually what I like to do is assign manually, because then it gives me the control over who goes where and how many people go where. So when you do that, you assign manually, you will be able to choose how many rooms you want, and then you can go through onto the right, what happens is you'll see the breakout room, how many rooms you've created, and you have the option of choosing who goes into which room. So as you can see here, Eleanor, Elise, and Vincent were moved into breakout room 1. And then once that is assigned, then you can go to breakout room 2 and then choose, you know, any of the remaining attendees to be able to be assigned to the second room. So by doing this, it's a really great way to, you know, have clients speak to each other, maybe do a little activity together, or if you are using it, you know, for any type of networking event or opportunity for a mock interview or what have you. It's a nice private space that you can control who's in the room for them to be able to communicate outside of the main meeting. All right. So that's a little bit about breakout rooms. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand it over. I think we are almost at time. I'm going to hand it over to Catherine to just quickly go over the whiteboard, recording, and reports. And then I'm going to finish off with the Zoom integration. Yep.
Okay, so if you stop sharing, then I think I will be able to, and hopefully this isn't too repetitive. Am I a co-host or something now?
You are co-host, yeah.
Okay, yeah, hopefully we were wanting to go into some of the more detailed things that you don't necessarily come across, one of which was whiteboard. And again, that's a share screen. So as a host, if you share screen, but instead of choosing one of your opened websites or other screens, there's an option to share a whiteboard, which is an opportunity for everybody can see this, yes?
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay. So it's an opportunity for an interactive thing. As an example, we use it in our, we use it on the, say the final day of our entrepreneurship program as a closing event. Since we're not in person, we're not doing a live graduation event, we want to do some activities with the group sort of as a closing fun activity. So we play Pictionary, where the host can send a word in a private chat to one of the participants, and then, you know, they're asked to draw something, and then the group guesses what it is. So that's an opportunity for just a fun thing. But you can imagine that in a in a meeting setting or something else, that you could also use that for brainstorming and people sort of throwing some ideas around. So that was one thing we wanted to show you. And then just quickly about reports. Once you've had your meeting or webinar, you have an option to go in and look at reports. So it's always important to track your participants. You don't get you don't necessarily get the number of participants in a meeting. So it's important if you're doing a meeting and you need to capture the number of participants to do that during the meeting. But for webinars, you can go to reporting. So where am I going? I'm going to share my screen. I was going to my Zoom that I have open. Where is it? There it is. So in reports, is that in, oh, I'm already there. Yeah, reports is very bottom. For example, in a webinar, you could go to the reports. You can choose, maybe you want to know how many registered versus how many attended. You know, what is tracked is counted. So it's really important to keep track of numbers. So for example, here for a session we had this morning, you could choose and know that, see on the far right, you have 12 registrants. And then you could also get a report that is an Excel report, which shows the participant names and their their emails if you wanted to do a follow-up. So that was about that one. And then also recordings for webinars. If you wanted to share recordings, as we mentioned earlier, you can set up the webinar so that a recording goes out automatically to people after the session, or you can manage that. For example, if I wanted to share this one, you can choose to share, and I think if I hit share, you will see, oh, it's expired, sorry. If you click on, sometimes we put an expiry date. So if we share a webinar with participants, but we want it to be limited. For example, if there's, if we were doing an event with the CRA and their information changes from time to time, it's updated. It's important for people to have updated information. We might not want to have a recording available to people for an extended time. But if you have a recording, you can open it up and then you can edit it. So it might be, for example, like this webinar might be an hour and a half long, but maybe for privacy reasons, you might want to edit and cut out the Q&A or chat that happens at the end, and you might just want to share the content, the presentation proper. So for those reasons, you can edit and then share it. So that was that. Did I miss anything there, Keisha?
Nope, I think we are good. So we're actually, I know, over time. Sorry, Jassy. I was just saying. So what I'm gonna do at this point, Catherine, if you don't mind sharing the screen, I'm just gonna go over the other platforms quickly and the Zoom integration. Sorry, everybody, that we are a little bit over time. We did have a lot to talk about today.
Am I there? No.
So you're gonna go to Zoom integration.
There.
Yep. So what is Zoom integration? So the integration is when multiple third-party software applications with different uses and functions merge seamlessly with Zoom, which is what ACCESS has done. So these integrations for Zoom meetings were created to help improve productivity and create more engaging experiences. So this allows, your organizations to take full advantage of Zoom's functionalities and, create productivity, collaboration, and of course, marketing. So the benefits of this, so what we do specifically with ACCESS is our software platform that we use for all of our client information is stored in Salesforce. So for us, what we do is we create an event in Salesforce, which automatically creates the event in the specified Zoom account holder account. So we pretty much can create an event, put in the staff member's Zoom name that's attached to their Zoom account, and it automatically transfers over. So you're not doing double the work. What happens is the integration is taking place and it's doing that work for you on Zoom so that you don't need to go in and manually add that as well. Now, the cool thing about this is that clients only need to register once via the Salesforce links that are generated when we create it. And the registration details are automatically passed over to Zoom. So registration and attendance are automatically captured in Salesforce as well. So we don't need to pull any reports from Zoom, like in terms of, the participants or the attendance or, anything related to that. We would actually get that information directly from Zoom, and it's integrated into Salesforce, where we can see, who attended what, and who was actually participating in the meeting. So that's really cool as well. And then, of course, confirmation and reminder emails will come directly from Zoom. And instead of hopping back and forth between different applications, you're able to simplify your workflow and freely pass the information across your team before, during, and after the Zoom meetings. That's a little bit about our integration. And, if you are interested in integration, I highly recommend you reach out to Zoom. So quickly, we're just going to go over some of the other platforms we use here at ACCESS. One of them being Brazen. So Brazen offers one-on-one interviews. Recruiters are able to see candidates' resumes and can email them to their colleagues directly. The cool thing about Brazen, so pretty much it's best suited for hiring or recruitment or mentoring events. The reason is because you have your little booths within Brazen, but you can actually take notes while meeting with the individual one-on-one. You can view their resume within the platform while talking to them, and you can add any pre-qualifying questions, and you can do live video broadcast. So a lot of our staff, because Brazen is new for us, are now starting to, instead of running a job fair through Zoom, which we used to do a lot, now we're, trying to shift over a little bit and get some experience with Brazen so that it's a little bit more organized for the individuals that are coming in to volunteer their time. So that's a little bit about Brazen.
I'm just going to jump in and say one thing quickly. If you have clients and candidates who are being told they're using Brazen and you're trying to support them, one thing we've learned is that because it is a chat function, if you're in Brazen, it's great to have another screen open that has sort of some pre-prepared statements. So if you were a candidate, for example, and the interviewer asks you, oh, tell me about your experience using Zoom, whatever. The client could have a sort of a prepared answer that they could drag into the chat. So it just speeds things up for them. That was a little strategy that we've learned along the way.
Perfect. And Hopin is actually something that we've rolled out within ACCESS as well. Funny enough, Hopin and Brazen are pretty similar. However, Hopin is actually really good for, informational, events, informal networking, open houses, and things like that. So for example, with ACCESS, as most of you know, we have a lot of different bridging programs, and Hopin is a really great way for us to advertise all of our different programs in separate booths where our attendees can, hop in to the different booths in order for us to give the information that they need. So Hopin is a customizable schedule. They have a large group broadcast, and booths have polls, they have chat, presentation sharing, video and website links, and one-on-one networking. Hopin can host a large number of events, and the way that Hopin is done, they have a stage where, you can have somebody doing the main message before the event gets started, and then you as an attendee have the option to hop over to the different booths and get the information that you need from each booth. So that's how Hopin works. And then lastly, because I know we're way over time, is Spark Hire. So Spark Hire is used a lot across ACCESS, especially for employment services and our bridging programs. So it offers virtual interviewing practice opportunities for your clients. It makes the interview preparation process a lot more accurate, collaborative, and enjoyable for everyone involved. And it offers both one-way and live video. So the benefits for this is clients don't need any specific software or an account to use it. They just pretty much they will get an invitation from you as the host of the Spark Hire interview. They go in, they make a quick account, and they can answer the questions. The programs can customize the questions depending on the client's background and career goals. And staff can view and share these mock interviews with clients, as well as provide feedback. So that's what we use it for mostly. It's for mock interview practice. It's a great way for clients to be able to self-identify, what they may be doing wrong, how they come off on camera. Maybe they have like little habits that they have to, like swinging your chair side to side when you're talking and things like that. So I think it's a really great way for clients to be able to self-identify and be able to fix those, as well as get feedback from, one of the staff here at ACCESS on the actual material in terms of what they've said in each of their answers. So yeah. Those are some, not all, but limited to our different platforms that we use. And these are just the costs associated with the different platforms that we covered today. So Zoom, as you know, if you have a basic account, it is free. However, if you are looking for a licensed account for your organization, it's about $400 a year with up to 500 attendees per event. Really good deal. Brazen, you would have to, of course, go on to their subscription page in order to get an idea. It's all customizable with them. So the pricing changes depending on your needs. Hopin, as you can see, is 99 USD per month for up to 100 registrations and 50 cents for any registration after that. And you can have an unlimited amount of events every month. And then, of course, Spark Hire cost depends on all of the numbers of jobs and all of the numbers of the users that you need. So it would be based on, you know, how many people are coming in and out of your programs, or, you know, how many people need to access the services associated with doing a mock interview. So again, you can go onto the websites that are marked. And we thank you so much for being patient and listening to our whole presentation.
Oh, thank you so much to both of you for the thorough run through of Zoom, and then also the other kind of platforms there. I think many of us are using this all the time, but I think we likely don't use all the functions that would make our programming so much more effective and efficient. So this is very, very, very much appreciated. Thank you all for attending and sticking around to the end. Huge thank you to our presenters and to our Newcomer Services Collaboration Working Group Subcommittee that helped organize the session today. Enjoy the rest of your day and week, everybody. We'll share the recording with you when we can.